We have great pleasure to listen to what views he has to offer here to us. So over to you, sir. Before that, I just want to welcome you with this bouquet. Over to you, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I thought tea was served outside. Good evening. That's much better. Thank you. I do understand Bonvita gives more energy than tea, but all the same, Ahmedabad mein cha chale hai na. Okay. Yes, Anurag said that management and consciousness supposedly don't go together. But even before that, first of all, let me express my sincere thanks to each one of you for your time and hopefully your attention. For your time, because it's raining outside, you could have done so many other things. You could have gone home and relaxed. You could have gone to the nearest dal vada joint. You could have, the strongest thing you can have is Wagh Bakri. My friend Parag is not in town, otherwise he would have been very happy at the mention of his brand of tea. Or you could have gone to watch a movie. Lots of movies, There's one movie which is based on my hometown which is running. In our days, when I was in college, the train was called Tamil Nadu Express. Abhi gaadi thodi choti ho gayi hai. It's become Chennai Express. Somebody remarked yesterday that Shah Rukh seems to have been inspired by my life. I didn't drive an engine, I only rode a bike. Anyway, management and consciousness. But why should they be separate from each other? On the one hand, you're talking about managing, and on the other hand, you're saying you can't be conscious. Pretty often when I visit B schools and talk to students, I ask them to learn Swahili or Zulu or Mongolian or some language which is difficult to pick up. Do you know why? Because if you want to succeed in management, you should learn languages which others don't understand. But I'll try and make it simple for you, because fortunately for me and for everybody else, I always say this very proudly, I didn't go to a B school, which is probably why I look pretty relaxed and chilled out, as the youngsters would mention. I'm going to take you through a presentation, but that's going to be a little while from now. I want to share some situations or stories, if you like. The first is something I think most of you are likely to be familiar with. The average day in the life of an average corporate executive. He wakes up in the morning, or rather is jolted out of his sleep by the alarm clock. He hits his hand on the snooze button in the hope that these 5 minutes will give him probably all the sleep that he actually wanted. Then he presses the snooze button for another 3 minutes. Finally, he has no choice because he has to go to work. Let me repeat. He has to go to work. He gets out of bed, rushes through his morning preparations, gulps down his first cup of black coffee. His breakfast is sparse because he thinks he's in a hurry. He doesn't have time for people at home. He jumps into his car, and as he drives out of his house onto the main road and goes a little further, let's call it CG Road or SG Road or Relief Road. I'm surprised why they named it Relief Road. What a contradiction. And before he realizes it, he's stuck in a jam. A jam is inevitable. It's going to be happening in any case. So he curses his luck. He's stuck. There are vehicles on both sides. He's jammed. As the jam clears, something that has to happen will happen. And people call it The educated call it Murphy's Law. I call it plain takdir. The vehicle in front of him breaks down. And you hear, if this were a comic book, you would hear dots and dashes and asterisks and ampersands and so many other things. Anyway, he somehow gets out of that jam and reaches the office to realize that when he is swiping the card, it's going to show that he is about 7 or 8 minutes behind schedule. As he rushes into the main office, he bumps into someone who's carrying a mug of coffee. The coffee spills, a bit on him and most of it on the other person. But he yells. He bumps into a young man who is walking out of the office with a bag in his hand. Obviously, this man is ready for the day and is going out to do the most difficult thing that people talk about, to sell a product, maybe to an unknown customer. Because he bumps into him, he gives him a dirty look. The young man was expecting something else. Anyway, he walks into the hall where his own cabin is located, and a young lady says, "Good morning, sir." Now, what do you think his reaction is likely to be after what he has gone through? Any guesses? Would anybody like to give it a try? Wonderful. Who was that? Oh, great. Except that there's a small little punctuation issue in between. There are lots of punctuations in between. That's the only thing. What is ... dash dash so good ... dash about this ... dash morning? He gets into the cabin. Before he can actually sit down, the telephone rings. He picks up the phone and says, "Can't you see? I have just walked into the..." How can someone? We didn't know video conferences have begun already. Before he can flip open his laptop, there's another call. He disconnects and realizes that in the next 7.5 hours, he has to wade through 14.5 hours of work. Well, that's how the day goes. In the evening, it's no different. It's absolutely the same. The only difference is that he isn't going home. He probably has a Rotary meeting to chair, or a social commitment to fulfill, or about half an hour back, his wife would have called and she would have asked a very innocent question, "Kab aa rahe ho?" And he would have given the same answer which most of you give, "Bas abhi nikal raha hu, 10 minute mein," which can happen 3 or 4 or 5 times. And then when the wife very reassuredly tells him, "No, don't worry, आराम से आना, लेकिन आते वक्त पाव लेते आना, मैं आज पाव भाजी बना रही हूँ." And that's when he says, "Am I a vice president or a procurement manager for pav?" So that's his day. Weekends. And the biggest problem with most of us is Monday to Friday we wade through all that. So on Friday evening, what do we all say? Thank God it's Friday. Now God should have made Fridays every second or third day, right? But then weekends, what happens? Either you need to go and meet someone, or you have to ferry the kids from one dance class to another music class to another sports class, or your car tells you, "You haven't paid much attention to me in all these months, so take me to the nearest Toyota workshop." And that's how it is. How many of you did not find this as an exaggeration? You didn't find this as an exaggeration. Did all of you find this as an exaggeration? You didn't. It's more or less on the lines, right? So this is one situation. I leave it at this point. I'll come back to it. The second situation. There is a man, let's say it's me, who is currently staying in the city of Madras, as the city used to be called at that time when I used to stay there. And there's this beautiful Marina Beach, you must have heard of it, the second longest beach in the world. Now, an extension of the Marina Beach is called the Elliott's Beach. It is in an area called Besant Nagar, or those of you who are familiar with Madras or Chennai, an area called Adayar. Now, one hasn't stepped into the water in the beach for a long time, so one says, come on, let me do it. The wife and son want to play safe. They go and sit on the sand near the water. They don't venture forward. But I go forward. I remove my footwear. I roll up my trousers and go and stand there. And slowly wait for the waves to come and touch my feet. One wave, two waves, three waves. The fourth wave brings something which just touches my foot, and I pick it up. It is a battered old straw hat on the beach in one of the most beautiful beaches of Chennai. I look at the hat. 7 or 8 waves later, one slipper comes and touches my foot. So I pick it up. By then you can imagine what thoughts are going on in my mind. I'm sure you have the same thoughts. If it were Gujarat, you probably would have said, "A kone aya mukyu che?" Sorry, my Gujarati is a little, slightly derailed, but I'll try nevertheless. And before you realize it, there's a third item, and this one is the remnants of a floral garland, mala. By then, this man, you can say it is me, has had enough, because there is probably a museum getting created. Situation 2, we will leave it here at this point. I'll come back to it. The third situation, a boardroom in a corporate conglomerate. I don't think I need to clarify the spelling of board room. You can take it whichever way. The boss says, top line and bottom line, what's happening to the figures? The subordinate puts up his back foot display. He raises his toes and tries to get the ball well under the bat so that it drops at his foot. He does it two times, he does it 3 times. And the boss says, I want these figures by the end of the quarter. Is that clear? So we have a lot of problems. That doesn't matter. What are you paid for? You are paid to solve problems. Sir, but then some of these problems can only be solved by you. So how are you going to be able to step into my shoes, son, if you haven't learned to solve these problems? So figure out. We also did. In our days, we figured out some ways. You figure it out. Situation number 3. We'll stop it here at this moment. We'll come back to it. Situation 4. A very recent happening. Last Sunday, World Friendship Day. A famous mall in Ahmedabad. Everybody is out there. Friends call up their friends and say, come over, let's celebrate World Friendship Day together. Now it so happens that I'm there with my family, and we still have time for our movie. We got tickets for a movie. We couldn't get tickets for the movie we wanted to see, so we have to somehow put up with some movie that has to do with examinations and getting through that examination and things like that. As you find a place to sit down, you notice there are a lot of youngsters. It feels so good. All energetic, all colorfully dressed, all of them in their finery, smiling. There's a small hitch though. None of them is looking at each other. Each one and that's it. In the meanwhile, I spot a youngster and I think he is in trouble. He's holding on to his left ear. He's got a big white bandage on his left ear and he's in pain as he's talking to someone. I want to help him out. I go towards him. And then I find out it's not a bandage. It is a mobile phone slightly bigger than my palm and it is white in color. When I look at all these youngsters, the first conclusion I draw is, Not one of them can afford to. Sorry, I have friends from BlackBerry and Carbon. They are good students of mine, but I keep making fun of them. You have enough people to sell it to, don't worry. But I just can't figure out where does the money come for these people to buy these kind of smartphones. The world is getting smarter with the phones and we are getting dumber. I'll stop here for a minute. I'll come back to this situation. You must be wondering why I'm narrating so many instances. Maybe there is a common thread between these. There was a carpenter. He was a good carpenter. But he decided to quit one day. The carpenter went up to his boss, who was a construction site manager, and said, "Boss, I want to quit. Please settle my account." The boss tried reasoning with him. The guy didn't want to listen. He said, "I want to quit." The boss said, "Okay, fine. You've been a good carpenter. I'll let you go. But just do one thing for me. This project that you're working on, why don't you just complete it?" "What, now?" "Yeah, why don't you finish this project and then go?" "No, but I've decided to quit, boss." "No, why don't you just finish this project? After that, you're free to go." "Okay, if you insist." And he goes back to complete what he's been asked to complete, though his heart doesn't tell him anything. We'll stop it there. And we go to the last situation. An upscale hotel in an upscale town in the United States. An elderly couple, a husband and a wife, walk into the lobby of this hotel. One look at this couple and you can decide that they are very well to do, that they are very dignified, have an excellent background. They walk up to the reception and the gentleman asks the person sitting at the counter, "We would like to have a room for this evening. We'll check out tomorrow morning as early as possible." "Sorry, sir, we are full up." "We've driven down all day. We've been busy with programs. We've tried all the other hotels in town. They're all full. Could you please help us?" "I think I told you, sir, that we are full up. In fact, we have people waiting. You're not the first one." The elderly gentleman looks helplessly at his wife and says, "I think I'm a little too tired to drive back all the way to our town. What do we do?" The wife is equally helpless. Just at that time, another young man, probably an assistant manager in the hotel, who couldn't help overhearing this conversation, walks up and says, "Excuse me, sir, can I help you?" He says, "Yes, we have this problem. We wanted to get back to town, but the program we were attending finished late, so we are forced to spend the night here. But I'm told by this young man that there's no room available." The young man looked at the couple and said, "Sir, I think we can find a way." "How's that?" "Sir, I can give you my room." "Are you a resident of this hotel?" "No, sir, I work here. In fact, I am the duty manager." "Oh, no, I don't think I can take away your room. I don't want to deprive you of your room, young man." "No, sir, it isn't any loss or anything like that. I'm going to be spending the night on duty. So you may please, the only thing is, I do hope that you find the room okay. Would you like to see the room, sir?" He says, "No, I don't think I want to inconvenience you, young man. Sir, I insist that you see this room." And he gently took this couple to his room, opened the door, let them have a look at the room. The elderly gentleman told his wife, "I see no reason to find anything wrong with this room. The bed is clean, the bath is clean. What do we do?" The elderly lady says, but this poor gentleman says, "Ma'am, I want to tell you, I'm not going to be in the room. Please, I insist that you spend the night here." The elderly couple spends the night in the hotel in the room belonging to the manager. And early morning, they check out. They seek out this assistant manager. And the elderly gentleman tells him, "Thanks very much. We really didn't know where to go. But I think you will become the general manager of one of the best hotels in this country ever." The young man laughs to himself, and probably if we interpret that in Hindi, he must be saying, "ठीक है यार, ठीक है, ये सब बहुत बार सुना है मैंने." And the couple leaves. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about management by consciousness. I just narrated a few instances. In each of those cases, there was some kind of management involved. In each of the cases, there was also a connect with consciousness. Let's just look at each of those situations again, or the way I like to put it, stop, cut, rewind, replay. In the first instance, the corporate executives wakes up after a nice restful sleep because he went to sleep on time. He wakes up, stretches himself, does whatever workout he likes. Probably goes for a swim, probably for a run, probably does a bit of yoga at home, has a relaxed breakfast with his family, talks to his son, talks to his daughter, has a quick chat with his wife, checks the morning newspaper, puts it aside, saying he'll look at it later on. Gets into the car, he knows there is going to be a traffic jam. He looks forward to it because that's when he can switch off the engine, switch on the music, and listen to his favorite songs. Until someone gently reminds him from behind that the jam is cleared. He drives into his office 2 minutes before D time. Greets people on the way. Makes sure he doesn't bump into someone who's carrying a mug of coffee. Looks at a young man who's walking out with a bag in his hand and says, "Hey, that was a wonderful sale you did yesterday, I say. Must have been a tough one. Congrats, well done. We need guys like you." As he walks into his cabin, he looks at that young lady who assists him and says, "You look prettier today than you ever did. Wish you a very good morning." Goes into his room. The phone rings. He flicks open his laptop, looks at the phone and says, "I think I can call back after a couple of minutes." And begins his day. He knows he has something to the equivalent of 14 hours of work. But then all he says is, "I think I know what I need to do today. So let me focus on that. The rest can handle by itself." That's one. At the beach, I pick up these 3 pieces of, what do you call them? Museum display. And I wonder, who could this guy be? The man with the hat. Would he be an Indian? Would he be a foreigner? Why would he have come to this part of Madras? Did the slipper belong to the same guy who had the hat? या किसी ने किसी को माला पहनाया और किसी ने किसी को टोपी? And one starts thinking about this. So the anger goes, and in place of that, curiosity comes in. And you start weaving some kind of a story around those people. In the boardroom, the director tells the young man, "We have a problem, we are lagging behind. Both top line and bottom line need attention. What do we do? Any suggestions?" And then he says, "Okay, let's find some suggestions. Let's try and implement them together. If you succeed, you get the credit. If we fail, we'll take the flak together. And then let's find some solutions. Let's do one thing, let's set up a meeting tomorrow to just look at this particular issue, which is probably the biggest, and then we can find other solutions later on." And then he also tells him, "I know you got only 3 months. The bad news is time flies. The good news is you are the pilot." At the shopping mall, I am only left wondering, what is it that parents are doing? Is it that the corporate executive is so busy running his organization that every time his kid comes and tells him, I want the most exclusive and the most expensive smartphone, he says, sure, as long as you don't bother me and let me do my work. Are we giving our children valuable things, or are we passing on value systems? The carpenter comes back to the project site in charge and tells him, boss, my work is over, settle my accounts please. The boss puts his hand into his pocket, takes out a key and says, here you are, my gift to you, the house that you just built. I always wanted to give you a house. And the carpenter says, gosh, if only I knew that this house was going to come to me, how nicely I would have constructed it. हम जब भी घर बनाते हैं किसी और के लिए, I guess this is the attitude that comes in. The hotel manager lets the couple check out and go, smiles at that comment made by the elderly gentleman. A year later, he receives an envelope with a letter. The letter says, we are pleased to appoint you as the general manager of this hotel of ours. We're extremely proud to tell you that our new property in New York opens 4 months from today. This appointment letter is valid from 2 months from now, so that you can join us and become familiar with all the formalities. And on top of that letter is a yellow stick note which says, son, you were very nice to us the other day. You displayed hospitality of the highest order. Without a care in the world, you gave away whatever you had for that night. You are fit to head this hotel, the Waldorf Astoria, which is going to be known as the best hotel ever in this particular city. Ladies and gentlemen, let's start with the last story. Management by consciousness, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual connect with the customer. It would be very easy, you would be forgiven if you told your customer or your prospective guest, sorry sir, we are full up. They wouldn't have minded. 3 hotels had already done it. This man went out of the way. He did not know that this gentleman was the director of the Waldorf Astoria. He did not know that 1 year from today, he was going to get an appointment, a plum job. We get into a business school, sure that 2 years from today, we're going to get a CTC of so much, just because we've got into a business school. And the business school and the parent and the youngster, everybody decides that this is what's going to happen to me. What are you doing to ensure that you get a plum assignment? We'll look at that. The carpenter, we already discussed his thought process when he got the key. Look at the corporate executive. Look at the man on the beach. A little adjustment of thought, a little different way of looking at a problem, a slightly different perspective, a slightly different point of view, and you can be right on top of the situation. Now this happens to us day in and day out. Do you agree with me? If you agree with me, what are we doing about it? Well, anyway, thank you very much for coming here, because the very fact that you've come here indicates that you would like to know how to look at life a little differently and how to look at your work a little differently. Management by consciousness is probably the 745th theory on management. You have management by objectives, management by exception, management by assumption. That's what MBA is, isn't it? Just kidding. There are so many models of mathematical measurement to say that work could be done in such and such time by so and so manager with this amount of efficiency. Wonderful. You have statistical tools, you have great equipment. But probably what is missing, and you'll all agree with me, is the human touch. I'm going to take you through a journey. It's not very long, it's just 13 minutes. But I have one request before that, and that is to kindly fasten your seat belts, switch off your mobile phones, and in case you can't switch off your mobile phone, could you at least put it on silent mode, because what you're going to see is something that might just startle you.